I love UFO 50, incredible accomplishment, super high value for the price, yada yada yada. Let's get to judging. The ranking criteria is simple. Single player gameplay merit. I understand they're part of a collection and a narrative building this fiction of a real console released in the 80s. But having a lore justification for your game being crap still leaves you with a pile of crap in your hands. That said, I am super positively biased in favor of these games as a whole because it's such an impressive undertaking. You can't help but have a lot of goodwill toward it. Starting at the very bottom with the games that I thought were actually bad. I could go on a 10-minute rant for each of these, and many of them would involve bitching about the UFO 50 tedium tax. This was mentioned in one of the video comments and it really resonated with me. Some games in UFO 50 demand an upfront investment of tedium to get to the good bit. I'm specifically talking about games that start with some tedious mechanic or gameplay loop that only gets bearable or even eliminated once you reach a certain point in your progress. Not every game in this tier does this, but they are the majority. The tax
is too damn hot.
At the rock bottom is Pilot Quest, in which the tedium tax is so high, you're supposed to stop playing the game out of boredom. You're meant to set up resource farms that run in the background while you play other games in the collection. I didn't know this! How crazy of me to assume I'm supposed to play the game, huh? And so I spent 10 minutes smacking the crystal for the only means of early progress. Designing a game not to be played is a cardinal sin, and I'm ideologically opposed to Pilot Quest. It requires you to spend finite resources to even have the privilege to go out on an expedition to the overworld, which has a massive tedium tax in itself, until you get the upgrades that make the awful combat remotely bearable. I could bitch about Pilot Quest forever. Let's move on. In number 49, Onion Delivery stands alone in UFO 50 as the only game that feels outright unfinished and incompetent. And it's another one that inflicted
emotional damage.
Because on paper I should have absolutely loved it with the GTA 1 style of gameplay and the enormous whimsical charm of the setting. But it feels so rough, like something that came out of a 12-hour game jam. The camera doesn't point where it should half the time, it doesn't have basic sound effects like the hum of an engine, the rain effect is the worst thing I've ever seen, and do bear in mind I've seen your mother naked, and some of the random events are so intensely unfair, you won't convince me this was playtested by more than one person. Add to that the one earworm music track that plays over and over and over and over and over and over. I'll freely admit this one is ranked so low because it should have been at the top for me. And it annoys me so much that it isn't. Realistically, it's like middle of the pack material. Number 48, Planet Zoldath is a light combat exploration game saddled with atrocious inventory management and backtracking through randomized maps, all wrapped in a slow walking slog. You can only get past obstacles if you are carrying the appropriate items, so have fun backtracking for that one thing you left 8 screens behind. With some surprise, I find myself unable to say a single positive thing about Planet Zoldath. In 47, Barbuta is all tedium tax. It's a 2D platformer where you explore a giant castle with tons of secrets, and the glacial movement speed is the deal breaker that makes it all come crashing down. Some UFO 50 games artificially cripple themselves to keep up the meta-narrative of an old-school 80s console. It's a damn shame because everything else about Barbuta looks to be a fun time. It just demands an unreasonable level of patience. In 46, Golfaria, a zero-combat exploration game with an extremely slow and tedious golf-like movement scheme. It does get points for the super cute narrative of sentient golf balls as NPCs, but the juice ain't worth the squeeze. There's an upgrade later on that makes the movement not nearly as frustrating by allowing you to brake to a stop, which truly begs the question, why couldn't I do that in the first place? The answer is, you have to pay the toll! Number 45, Borgie is another exploration Metroidvania that is tedium tax to the max, with constant backtracking and retreading of the same areas baked into the design, because the entire way to progress is to grab items and bring them back someplace. Many of the bad games saddle you with this frustrating and slow movement and demand you dodge things anyway, and 30 minutes in it makes you want to pull your hair out. Porgy does give you a dodge roll of sorts, but using it makes you spend fuel, which dramatically reduces the time you can spend away from home base. Porgy is anti-fun. Just a sliver above number 44, Divers feels like a Porgy remake, except to this one they added a brain-dead, hyper-grindy JRPG with an inexplicably opaque interface. Really, no one will die if you write shop on top of this icon, and it's okay to use 2 bytes instead of 1 for item names. Why do I buy Subotten instead of a small potion? Nobody knows. The only reason it's a little bit above Porgy is because it truly nails the cool and creepy underwater atmosphere. 43 Squibble Race. It's one of the weirdest in the collection. You gamble on raising quibbles, and the objective is to beat your rival gamblers/quibble sponsors with betting savvy and sabotage. And I think it's just that I really don't give a crap about gambling. It has no sway with my brain. So if you're big into sports bets, maybe this is the game for you. For me, it was quirky and funny, but I can't possibly think of it as a good game. Number 42 is Fist Hell, which is so busy trying to be faithful to the Double Dragon Brawler spirit that it forgets to be fun. It's another one saddled with stupidly slow movement speed, though it does have movement tech to palliate that somewhat. It's the utterly insane difficulty that makes this one so frustrating to stick with. Case in point, your whirlwind kick drains your health when you use it. How delightfully anti-fun. Our number 41, Combatants, is a casualty of UFO 50's design space. Imagine a real-time strategy game controlled with a 2-button gamepad, and that abomination is Combatants. I actually liked this game, I understood it, and I would have absolutely loved it if the movement of everything weren't a literal crawl. You are constantly waiting for everything, but of course, if you don't slow down the units, controlling them with a gamepad would become a nightmare of its own. The concept for this game should have been killed before writing the first line of code, or at the very least, they should have introduced compatibility with the LX2 mouse peripheral. At number 40 comes Avianus. Listen! It's not you, it's me, Avianus. I understand you're a deep and cool strategy game beloved by many. I understand you have a lot going for you, but I found your interface so hideous and clumsy. Cardinal Sin, another strategy game without a mouse. Your auto battles are so ugly and tedious, I just don't wanna learn your cool and deep gameplay. It's not you, it's me. I know I'm in the minority, but man did I bounce off hard from Avianus. Number 39, Grimstone, is definitely another case of it's not you, it's me. The comments told me it's real good at what it does. I've just never in my whole life gotten into a retro early Final Fantasy JRPG type. The aesthetic prevents me from getting invested, and the inescapable grinding is a bummer to even think about. Still liked it better than Avianus. Number 38, Mortal 2, what a hot streak of hot takes. This 2D puzzle action platformer weird hybrid thing is just too open-ended. It tangled my mind with all the possibilities. I hated not being able to look down, and I just didn't want to figure it out with all the retrending of the same areas. Extremely creative and cool game design, it feels the weirdest game to have disliked. But even now I'm like, I don't wanna put in the intellectual labor to figure this one out. And that ain't my fault, that's the game's fault. That's the end of the bads, now come the forgettable pack fillers. Games that are mediocre or kinda boring in an inoffensive way. A 37, Lords of Disconia. It's a funny and novel concept, a 1v1 tactics game in which your units are discs and you bounce them around the medieval battlefield, but the pacing is so slow as you wait for every move to end. It bogs down the whole experience to the point that every match overstays its welcome once the novelty wears out. 36, Cyber Owls takes 5 different little games from different genres and crams them into one. An owl agent will be a side-scrolling brawler, another will be a top-down Metal Gear stealth kind of thing, and so on. The problem is that each one is kind of shallow and half-assed. I get what they were going for, and I admire the ambition, but like, 5 okay games don't make a good game, they just make a forgettable game jam compilation. In number 35, Devilition, there's really nothing wrong with this chain explosion puzzler, but I only remember it existed because I was looking at the list of games to rank them. It's good at what it does, I just literally forgot it. 34, Hyper Contender. This 2D arena fighter is probably a ton of fun for couch multiplayer, but as a single player game, it's a once and done type of deal. It's fun to see each character's abilities, and that's about it. The only saving grace is it features the absolute best character in all of UFO 50, the mighty Donkus! 33 is Elphazar's Hat. Again, nothing negative to say about this top-down action shooter, and in fact I like the lore wrapped around it, but the gameplay is just kind of bland and run-of-the-mill. It slid right off my brain after I finished it in about an hour. Number 32, this one hurts. The Big Bell Race, the definition of a pack filler. Pretty much, it's a mod for Campanella 1. I absolutely loved my 15 minutes with this single-screen racing game. And then the 15 minutes were over, I had easily aced every race, and there's no replay value whatsoever for a single player. I would have felt swindled as a kid bringing this cartridge home at full price like I did on the release of Rise of the Robots. What a gut punch that was. I remember it so well as my very first broken game bait and switch experience. The Big Bell Race would have been that for a fictional kid trying it out on release. Now next tier is the glut of the catalog, and that's games that are they're a fun time because they are competent at what they're trying to do. Just don't expect them to floor you with their sheer quality. At number 31, Block Koala. I'm too stupid to play through Block Koala, but it did make me feel real smart to figure out the first few levels. This block-pushing puzzler is literally too smart for me, but I really can't call it a bad game or a pack filler. If you're into the genre, it's probably as good as it gets. At number 30, look, I went back and forth with myself on whether I respect Mooncat or not. Because on one hand, it's an extremely short and simple platformer, but on the other hand, the insane control scheme challenges everything you've learned about controlling 2D platformers and forces you to really engage with it in a way that no other game will. So I decided to be a filthy fence-sitter and put it at the bottom of the good games. I was told I adapted to the controls quite a bit faster than your average streamer, so maybe that's why it didn't have that much of an impact for me. Number 29, Camouflage, is a pretty easy stealth puzzler that I would wholeheartedly recommend for your kids. They'll be challenged to think through all the colors you need to swap to make it to the end without being horribly eaten alive. Not every game in the collection needs to be a 20-hour JRPG or a tough as nails arcade coin gobbler. I cherried this one in about 2 hours from start to end, and it was a fun, pleasant experience that left me feeling like a smart boy. 28, Rakshasa, is a 2D run-and-gunner and platformer with a neat twist on death and revival. Instead of giving you a set number of lives, it makes it harder to come back to life every time you die. It's really competent at what it does, but a bit too difficult for me to put in the time to finish it. 27, Hotfoot is a weird dodgeball sports thing that has you control 2 teammates at the same time. Casual child violence is always funny, and the skill ceiling was surprisingly high with all the things you can do, but like many games of this type, it gets old pretty fast in single player. At 26 is Mini and Max. I know I should put this one way higher. It's such an original take on the 2D platformer exploration collectathon archetype. You basically shrink into all the different levels and also use it for fast travel. It's so damn clever. But I think about exploring this low-stakes, gigantic game world inside this little girl's room, going back and forth collecting doodads and fetching key items. I just don't want to do it. It's 100% another case of, it's not you, it's me. I truly recognize how cool this game is. A 25-star Wasper is an excellent classic shoot 'em up that's just way too difficult for my nervous system. I really tried to get past the third stage and failed miserably, so you know, exactly what I have come to expect from this genre. I don't resent it one bit, but I did rate it lower than a fan of the genre might have. A 24 Campanella 3, which is another shoot 'em up, but this time you travel into the screen in amazing 3D graphics. Not much else to say about it. If you like the shooting in space types, this is a good one. 23, if you'd rather shoot things scrolling side to side, that's Caramel for you, and I'd consider it the best of the three because on top of shooting and dodging and charging your laser, you are also using your camera for special interactions. It's super engaging from the first second and just a little bit easier than Star Wasper, so it didn't make me as utterly hopeless. 22 Seaside Drive is another shoot 'em up, but this time you're limited to moving side to side along the bottom of the screen with the added wrinkle of having to constantly drift backwards to supercharge your shots. It's the least complicated and most forgiving of all the shoot 'em ups, which allowed me to actually complete it. It's really fun, though also pretty short. Number 21. I guess I would call Paint Chase an action puzzler. You're on a timer and the goal is to end with the stage painted with as much of your color as possible. You can wing it through the whole game or you can get real sweaty and memorize the optimal route, and it took a combination of the two for me to actually beat it. It's an addictive one, really easy to understand but hard to crack. It feels fundamentally fair and it makes you want to try again as soon as you lose. It's really good. At number 20, Campanella 1 asks you to fly through a ton of one-screen mazes with some light combat thrown in, getting more and more complicated as the game goes on, and the controls are so good. I love the analog feel of how the ship moves and navigates around obstacles. It's extremely forgiving with extra lives, though you're likely to spend them all on the final boss, which is complete bullshit, and made me baby rage profusely. I'm still fond of it overall. Number 19, you are dead inside if you didn't like Waldorf's Journey. This is the most charming and whimsical game in the collection, yes, including Mooncat, mixing Joust and Jump King to have Waldorf the Walrus float his way to the end of his dream. It's super simple to understand, but not that easy to complete, and the random generation of platforms means you can't just memorize the layout. You can get lucky, like I did, and skip half the game with one jump. Your results may vary. Number 18, Bushido Ball is another 1v1 sports game, pretty much tennis with swords. Much faster paced than Hotfoot, surprisingly deep to learn all the trick shots, and a really fun time to play. I bet this one is a riot in multiplayer. In real Street Fighter fashion, it ramps up the difficulty enormously toward the end of a run, and I was only able to cherry it by discovering some reliable cheese. Number 17, Overbold is such a clever arena shooter because it makes difficulty an integral part of your decision making. Each round, you decide how many enemies to face and you get prize money based on that, which you then can use to buy upgrades. You need a ton of upgrades to beat the final boss, so the whole playthrough you are constantly pushing just how much you can take, so you can get the best room clearing upgrades so you can take on more, so that way you can afford getting powerful enough for the final boss, and of course you are bound to get overbold in your ambitions. It's pretty rage-inducing, but in a good way. I had a great time getting the cherry. And number 16, Magic Garden, a genius level take on Snake, of all things. This game is a masterpiece of elegant design. And you'll soon realize the simple appearance is deceptive. Getting a win is hard enough, but it will take you a while to figure out how to get the score high enough for a cherry. I was shocked at how enormously engaging this game truly is. Number 15, we got Ninpek, my first true obsession while playing UFO 50. I didn't stop until I beat this one into the ground. I literally memorized it. I couldn't tell you what it is that appeals so much about this auto-scrolling ninja-themed run-and-gunner. And in fact, I'm probably ranking it too high, but it's just good at what it does. The controls are tight, and it was a fun challenge from start to end. It's probably all the clutch double jumps that really make Ninpek. Number 14 is Tactics, another triumph of game design. You'd think this fast-paced lane tactics game would benefit from a mouse, and it would, but it wouldn't be the same game. Managing your lanes without being able to drag and drop with a mouse pointer is an integral part of the challenge. By stage 3, you are sweating bullets with desperation to constantly plug the holes and take advantage of lines of attack, and the numbers and unit complexity just keep ramping up. Tactics is super stressful in the best way possible. Number 13 is Kick Club. Some UFO 50 games innovate in wonderful ways, while some others will pay homage to an old school classic. Kick Club is a Bubble Bobble clone where you kick balls to the face instead of blowing bubbles, and it's extremely good at it. I'd even say it surpasses the original. Velgress comes in at number 12, an absolutely brutal action platformer with randomized levels. The gameplay is the fastest and most frantic and relentless of the collection outside of Star Whisper. You cannot take a break, it's so tightly designed to give you barely enough time to decide what to do. It's so damn fun even though it induced a lot of baby rage while I failed over and over. I'm thankful for its short duration because if this game were any longer I would have died from a heart failure. And number 11, Pin Golf, mixes pinball and side-scrolling golf to create perfection. It's super simple, you gotta hit the ball into the chute. The ability to dunk the ball on demand absolutely makes this game and takes what would have been a decent experience into a precision challenge to get the optimal trick shots, and it feels so good when your fiery projectile skips through the whole level. It's super short though, if only there were more of it. Literally the only reason why this is not in the top 10. We've reached the top, and these are the games that could have been a standalone release. Maybe not exactly as they are, but with a little bit more polish or content. A combination of any 5 of these would have made UFO 50 worth buying. Number 10 is Valbrace, a first-person dungeon crawler with pattern-based real-time combat. It might be the poster child of UFO 50. It's probably the best looking and most fleshed out. Tons of secrets to discover, and it goes on for way longer than you'd expect in a 50 game collection, enough to give Legend of Grimrock a run for its money. The overabundant combat encounters do get a bit repetitive, and that's why it's down at number 10. Number 9, Warp Tank, a puzzle platformer where you figure out paths by zipping from wall to wall and shooting things. This one is both huge and constantly fun. It keeps introducing new obstacles, and I didn't expect it to be so damn engaging to find the path forward. The controls are super responsive, you can go really fast once you know what you're doing, and the devs know it because they tell you how long each level took you to complete, like daring you to speedrun it. It's just another really solid candidate to stand on its own. And number 8, Mortal, another puzzle platformer, but so different. You have a pile of suicidal warriors and they will stop at nothing for the mission. You will literally step over the bodies of your compatriots to get to the end of these levels, and the extra challenge comes in trying to use as few people as possible. I thoroughly enjoyed Mortal's casual disregard for human life. Number 7 is Rail Heist, but if I were trying to be an objective and prestigious game reviewer, I'd probably put this one at the top. Rail Heist is so good at giving you options to pull off your train robbery. It took me a while to get used to the real-time plus turn-based hybrid scheme, but once it clicks, it becomes another bit of genius game design. I was so impressed with this 2D Hitman-like crime simulator, with extra credit if you murder everyone. Number 6 is Bug Hunter. I've praised the elegant design of many of these games, and I think Bug Hunter is at the top in that regard. It's so neat and tight, with its twofold challenge of exterminating bugs with turn-based puzzle tactics merged with building the best deck possible to do so. It's deceptive how many options it gives you. I kept getting surprised at all the ways you can pull out of a seemingly impossible situation. Too bad it looks like ass. Number 5 is Party House, the absolute biggest surprise for me in the whole pack. Don't judge it by its fugly cover. Although it doesn't look it, at its core is a deck builder where your cards are partygoers with different benefits and drawbacks, and each night you top deck party members from your deck in your struggle to have the most optimal hands so you can achieve the ultimate goal of the level before you run out of knights. It looked so lame when I booted it up, but the incredible depth of optimizing your perfect party compositions combined with the thrill of playing the odds to get better outcomes makes this one enormously engaging and replayable. Number 4 is Night Manor, where the prose and horror atmosphere are so good that it did the impossible and made me look past the absolute abomination that are keyboard controls for a point-and-click adventure. It feels like the team blew the art budget on this one. There's so much great, creepy pixel art here. It's a simple story, pretty predictable, but it's so well executed. I do warn you though, you may get stuck in a few of the less intuitive puzzles, but there's nothing even close to Monkey Island level of egregious. Number 3, Rock on Island is a tower defense game that could easily sit on Steam all by itself for $5, and imagine if it had 2 or 3 more islands to play through. It doesn't have a clever twist or anything to break the mold, it's just solid, extremely addictive tower defense of cavemen versus dinosaurs. Getting through the levels is only a moderate challenge, but doing it without taking any damage, that's a different matter altogether. I only wish I could use the mouse to place things and look around the map, because keyboard controls do become rather tedious in the maps that don't fit in a single screen, but the game is so good it deserves number 3 anyway. In second place is Vanger. Vanger? Pretty sure it's Vanger. Literally a full Metroid clone with awesome twists all of its own, like reversing player gravity at will and super flexible upgrade system that will change the behavior of the upgrade depending on where you slot it. I was floored to see the level of quality and polish. I only missed a dedicated button to bring up the map at any point, instead of only being able to see it at a save terminal. And in first place is Campanella 2. If you're not familiar with this channel, you may be having a stroke right now. But if you are familiar, you'll know Spelunky is my bread and butter. So, of course, the Spelunky-like in UFO 50 would be the game that grabbed me the hardest, despite the relative lack of polish. Campanella 2 had me playing for a pile of recorded episodes and more runs in between until it was properly cherried. The walking sections do get repetitive, and the level generation could have used some tweaking so it would be less likely to completely screw you over, but the flying and exploration, which is the meat of the game, never got old. It is plain fun to control this ship and jump through all the game's hoops. The most impressive part though was the branching paths you can take to reach the end, each with its own fully fleshed out levels. The options elevated Campanella 2 all the way to the top. I am honestly surprised some of these games haven't gotten the full release treatment by their devs. The hard part is already done. You'd only need to make them prettier, or add more levels, or iron out some of the jank, or introduce mouse support. It really wouldn't take much to make these into indie darlings all of their own. In fact, I bet it would be a sustainable business model for an indie studio to clone the best UFO 50 games, add some bells and whistles, and release them one after another. Let me know how much I have deeply offended you with this list. I'm aware there's a number of hot takes in here. I look forward to your heartfelt yet erroneous repudiation.